Let me ask you something. If someone doubled your retirement budget overnight, would your life in Thailand actually become twice as good? Most people would probably say yes. A bigger condo, a better view, more meals out, maybe even a car. And on the surface that makes sense. More money should mean a better life. But after living in Thailand for many years, I've realised something. Extra money doesn't always buy what people think it buys. Sometimes it buys comfort, sometimes it buys freedom, sometimes it buys peace of mind. But sometimes people increase their spending without actually improving the life they're living. I've met retirees living on around $1,200 a month who are genuinely happy. They have a simple routine, good friends, a comfortable home, and they love their life here. And I've also met some people spending $3,000 or $4,000 a month who still feel stressed, isolated, or unsure if Thailand was the right choice. So maybe we're asking the wrong question. Every week I get messages asking, can I retire in Thailand on $750 a month? Is $1,500 enough to live comfortably? Do I really need $3,000 a month? And most budget videos answer those questions by listing numbers: rent, food, transport, entertainment. But numbers alone don't tell you what your retirement will actually feel like. Because the difference between those budgets isn't just what you can buy. It's how much flexibility you have. It's whether an unexpected expense becomes a crisis or just an inconvenience. It's whether you feel like you're enjoying your retirement or constantly managing it. So today I want to do something a little different. Instead of just comparing prices, I want to show you what life actually looks like at 3 different Thailand retirement budgets. What happens when you live on $750 a month? What changes when you move up to $1,500 a month? And what does $3,000 a month really give you? We'll look at the home you live in, the lifestyle you can enjoy, the choices you have, and the things most people don't think about until they actually move here. What happens when your ideal apartment doesn't allow pets? What happens when your laptop suddenly stops working? What happens when you need to fly home unexpectedly? What happens when you want to take a trip, upgrade your lifestyle, or simply say yes to something without worrying about the cost? Because those moments are where the real difference between these budgets appear. And by the end of this video, I'll tell you the budget I personally think gives most retirees the best balance between comfort, freedom, and peace of mind. And surprisingly, it probably isn't the number you expect. So let's start with the biggest expense for almost everyone moving to Thailand: your home. I want you to picture something, not a floor plan or the size of the condo. Picture a rainy afternoon, it's pouring outside, you've got nowhere to be, and you're spending the next few hours at home. That's when your home really matters. At the low end of this budget, it's probably a studio or small 1-bedroom. There's nothing wrong with that, but after a few hours you start noticing the little things. The TV through the wall, the lack of space. If family came to visit, they'd probably need a hotel because there's nowhere for them to stay. Move up a budget and your home starts giving something back. Maybe it's a proper 1 or 2 bedroom with a balcony you actually use, a pool you can swim in, a spare room for visitors. Instead of feeling cramped, it starts to feel comfortable. Then at the higher end, your home becomes somewhere you genuinely enjoy being. Maybe it's a house with a small garden, somewhere quiet, somewhere that actually feels like home, not just somewhere you're renting. And that's the question I'd ask yourself. Would you be happy spending an entire rainy afternoon there? Because retirement isn't one long holiday. It's thousands of ordinary days, one after another. And the place you come home to plays a much bigger part in your happiness than most people realise. Here's something hardly anybody talks about, and it has nothing to do with the rent prices. It's pets. I get asked this all the time, and the answer surprises people. Most condos in Thailand simply don't allow pets. Not prefer you didn't, they just don't allow them. And plenty of landlords renting houses will say no as well. I know this because I went through it myself. When I first had my dogs here, I was turned down again and again. It wasn't until I brought my own house here that the problem finally disappeared. Now here's where your budget comes into it. On a tighter budget, your rental options are already limited. Add a dog and they shrink even further. Spend a little more and suddenly you've got access to small houses instead of just condos. Spend more again and a house with a garden becomes a realistic option, and pets stop being a constant negotiation. It's one of those hidden costs of retirement that almost nobody thinks about until you're here. If you're planning to bring a dog from home, or you think you might adopt one after you move, don't overlook this. It could be the very thing that pushes you towards a bigger budget. Not because you want luxury, but because you simply want somewhere your dog is welcome. Let's make this real. Picture yourself waking up on an ordinary morning in Thailand. You fancy a coffee, maybe a walk to the local market before it gets too hot. On a tighter budget, every little decision comes with a quick mental calculation. Should I buy a coffee or just make one at home? Do I really need the air conditioning on yet? Or can I wait another hour? None of those decisions are a big deal on their own, but they add up over time. Spend a little more and that running calculation starts to disappear. You buy the coffee you actually want. You put the air conditioning on because you're hot, not because you convinced yourself to wait. They're small things, but they make everyday life feel easier. Then you reach the point where money hardly enters those decisions at all. You wake up and simply get on with your day. You're not living extravagantly. You're just not constantly thinking about what everything costs. And that's what I've realised after living here. The biggest difference between these budgets isn't the coffee or the electricity bill. It's the amount of mental space money takes up in your day. The less time you spend doing little calculations in your head, and the more time you spend simply enjoying your retirement. Food is one area where I think people often get Thailand completely wrong. Some assume a smaller budget means eating badly. It doesn't. Thailand has some of the best and cheapest street food in the world. And I know retirees here who eat better on a modest budget than they ever did back home. Where a bigger budget makes a difference isn't the quality of the food, it's the choice. At the lower end, you're probably sticking to local food most of the time. A Western breakfast, imported cheese or a good steak becomes occasional treats. Move up the budget and you start mixing it up. Street food because you want it, a nice restaurant when you fancy it, and imported groceries without feeling guilty. At the higher end, you stop asking, what can I afford tonight? And start asking, what do I feel like eating? Ironically, most people still end up eating plenty of street food because it's that good. The difference is simple. There's a big difference between choosing the cheaper option and only having the cheaper option. One thing people don't always think about is how your budget changes the way you experience Thailand. On a tighter budget, you're probably walking, riding a motorbike or using Grab. Every trip has a price attached to it. A weekend in Bangkok or a few days away takes a bit of planning because you're watching what you spend. Increase your budget and that starts to change. Grab becomes an easy decision. Weekend trips happen more often. You explore places you've never been simply because you feel like it. Then at the higher end, a car often becomes part of the picture. Suddenly, Thailand feels much smaller. A drive to another province for lunch, a weekend in Chiang Mai, or a beach a few hours away isn't something you spend weeks planning. You just go. And that's the real difference. A bigger budget doesn't just change how you travel. It changes how much of Thailand you actually experience. If there's one area where I wouldn't try to save money, it's healthcare. You can compromise on the size of your condo. You can eat more street food. You can skip the occasional weekend away. But health is different. It doesn't wait until you've saved a little more. It shows up when it wants to. One mistake I see people make is treating health insurance like an optional extra. On a tighter budget, it's often the first thing people cut back on, or skip altogether, because the premiums feel expensive. I understand why. I just don't think it's a risk worth taking. The other thing people forget is that insurance usually gets more expensive as you get older. A policy that feels affordable at 60 can feel very different 10 years later. So it's something you need to plan for. Then you got the difference between public and private hospitals. Thailand's public hospitals are perfectly capable and plenty of expats use them. But private hospitals are a very different experience. Shorter waits, English-speaking staff, and generally a more comfortable experience when you're already dealing with enough. The question is, can you use them without worrying about the bill? On a tighter budget, you might hesitate. You might put something off or hope it gets better on its own. With a bigger budget, you simply go. The same applies to dental work. Too many people delay treatment because they're trying to save money, and small problems have a habit of becoming expensive ones. So the biggest difference comes when something serious happens. A fall, a heart problem, a diagnosis you never saw coming. That's when your budget really matters. Because at that moment, you don't want to be asking, can I afford this? You want to be asking one question: what's the best treatment? And that's why for me, healthcare is probably the single biggest reason I recommend giving yourself a little more financial breathing room in retirement. Because peace of mind is worth far more than a bigger apartment or a nicer view. Retirement isn't just about paying the bills. It's about enjoying your life. And that's where your budget can make a real difference. On a tighter budget, you might think twice before saying yes to dinner with friends. Golf becomes an occasional treat instead of a regular hobby. Even grabbing a few drinks can come with that little voice in the back of your mind saying, can I really afford this? Increase the budget and those decisions become much easier. Dinner out, a round of golf, a weekend away with friends. Family come to visit and you're happy to take them out instead of worrying about what everything costs. You stop calculating and start saying yes. But there's something else I've noticed over the years. Some of the loneliest retirees I met weren't short of money. They just never built a community. Money can help you enjoy your social life, but it can't create one. That still takes effort. Joining clubs, meeting people, getting involved, and making real friendships. So when you're planning your retirement, don't just think about the budget. Think about the life you're going to build around it. Because having enough money matters, but having people to share it with matters just as much. Here's what almost every retirement budget leaves out: life. Your laptop dies. Your phone gives up. Your visa costs more than you expected. Insurance premiums go up as you get older. Your dog needs the vet. Your car needs repairing. A family emergency means an expensive last-minute flight home. Or maybe your son or daughter needs a bit of financial help. None of those things show up in a typical cost of living Thailand video, but they show up in real life. And they don't happen once. They happen over and over again. That's where I think a lot of people get caught out. They worked out the rent, the food, the electricity almost perfectly, but they haven't planned for life happening. Because life always happens. On a tighter budget, one unexpected bill can throw everything off. Suddenly you're deciding what to postpone, what to cut back on, or whether you can even afford to deal with the problem at all. With a little more breathing room, those same problems are still frustrating, but they aren't life-changing. I'll give you a real example. I know a retiree who planned everything down to the last dollar before moving here. His budget was spot on. Then within 18 months, his mother became seriously ill back home. He ended up paying for 2 last-minute international flights in a relatively short space of time. He hadn't planned for that. Not because he wasn't careful, because no one can predict life. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons in retirement. Don't just budget for your monthly expenses. Budget for the unexpected. Because sooner or later, something always comes along. If you've noticed a pattern in this video, it's this. We were never really talking about money. We were talking about stress. That's the real difference between these budgets. On a tighter budget, money never completely leaves your mind. You're checking prices, you're putting off buying things, you're hoping nothing unexpected happens this month. Not because you're doing anything wrong, just because there's very little room for error. Give yourself a bit more breathing room and something changes. You stop asking, can I afford this? And start asking, do I actually want this? That might not sound like a big shift, but it changes your whole day. You stop thinking about every coffee, every grab ride, every doctor's appointment, or every dinner out. You simply get on with living your life. And I think that's what retirement is really supposed to be. Not a bigger apartment, not a fancier car, not showing off to people back home. Just waking up each day without money constantly sitting in the back of your mind. Because after working for 40 or 50 years, isn't that really what most of us are trying to buy? Not luxury, peace of mind. That's the real upgrade. So let's answer the question I asked at the very beginning. What does a bigger retirement budget actually buy you? It isn't luxury. It isn't a bigger TV or a more expensive condo. It's freedom. The freedom to say yes more often than you say no. Yes to a weekend away. Yes to replacing something when it breaks. Yes to seeing your family when they need you. Yes to getting medical care you want. Yes to enjoying your retirement instead of constantly managing it. That's the real upgrade. Not a flashier lifestyle, a more relaxed one. And I think that's what most people are really looking for when they retire. Not more stuff, just fewer worries. Alright, so what would I do? If you asked me this over a coffee, I'd tell you exactly what I'm going to tell you now. Could you retire here on around $750 a month? Yes, people do it. Some are genuinely happy, but I wouldn't recommend it for most people. There's just not much room for life to happen. And as we've talked about throughout this video, life always happens. A bigger bill, a health issue, a family emergency, something always comes along. Around $1,500 a month is a very different story. I know plenty of retirees living good, comfortable lives on that sort of budget. And if that's where your finances naturally land, I don't think you should feel discouraged. But if you're asking me for the number I recommend most often, it's around $2,000 a month, or roughly 65,000 baht a month. Not because it's luxurious, because it's comfortable. It's the point where you stop worrying about every little expense. You can get good healthcare, you can deal with unexpected costs, you can enjoy your retirement instead of constantly managing it. For a couple, I genuinely say about $3,000 a month. You don't need to double everything because so many costs are shared. Now, are these magic numbers? No, Everyone's different. Some people will happily spend less, others will want more. But after living here for years, talking to hundreds of retirees and seeing what works in the real world, these are the numbers I keep coming back to. Not because they're perfect, but because they give you something that's incredibly hard to put a price on: peace of mind. If there's one thing I'd like you to take away from the video, it's this. Retiring in Thailand isn't about finding the smallest number you can survive on. It's about finding the number that lets you enjoy the life you work so hard to build. For some people, that'll be a modest budget, and they'll be perfectly happy. For others, spending a little more will buy something far more valuable than a bigger apartment or a nicer car. It'll buy peace of mind. And if you watch this far, I hope you can see that's what this video was really about all along. Not luxury, not showing off, just building a retirement where money isn't the thing you think about every day. So maybe the question was never, how much money do I need? Maybe the better question is this: how much peace of mind do I want? Now, I'd love to hear from you. After everything we've talked about, where do you think your comfort zone would be? Would you happily live on a leaner budget? Or would you aim for around $2,000 a month? Or would you want a little more breathing room? Let me know in the comments and tell me why. I read every comment and I'm always interested to hear the different ways people think about retirement. If this video has helped you look at retirement in Thailand a little differently, then I'm glad you watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one, guys.